Lesson number 12, Jesus' Opposition. In our last lesson, we were learning about responding to God's message and messenger. And in today's lesson, we are going to learn about the opposition against God's greatest messenger, Jesus. As Jesus went about doing good and healing people, the devil was not at all happy and stirred up the proud Pharisees to resist him. Though Jesus tried to do his work quietly and honorably, his enemies were not content to leave him alone. In their confrontation with him, they will learn that he is master over the Jewish law and that his witness is greater than Jonah's, and he offers greater wisdom than Solomon's. The Pharisees questioned Jesus about picking grain and eating it on the Sabbath, which they considered a violation of the Sabbath. They also were looking for an opportunity to accuse him when they watched him heal a man with a withered hand on the Sabbath. Jesus then has to show them that the Sabbath was not intended to stop men from performing good deeds and helping serve the needs of others. Jesus lets them know that he is the Lord of the Sabbath. He is not subject to the law of the Jews, as man was, for he is the author of God's law, to help man learn God's righteousness. He does not need the law to teach him what is right, for he is the giver of the law, and the source of all that is good and right and true, and will always act according to the righteousness of the law. He will help those who need help when they need it, for he is merciful and compassionate. The Sabbath had its place for the Jews, but Christians are no longer held under the same restrictions concerning the Sabbath, because the law and its principles of honoring the Lord are written upon the hearts of those who believe in Jesus Christ. As Jesus healed people, he tried to keep the matter quiet, not wanting undue attention or opposition. This quiet and gentle manner was foretold by the prophet Isaiah, who said he would not quench a smoking flax or break a bruised reed, meaning he came to help, heal, and build, not to tear down. We again find the Pharisees in confrontation with Jesus and accusing him of using Satan's power to cast out demons. Jesus said that the Pharisees were guilty of the greatest of sins when they blasphemed the Holy Spirit, and for this they would not be forgiven. When the Pharisees saw the mighty miracles of Jesus, which in truth was the work of the Holy Spirit, they said it was really the work of Satan. In doing this, they were equating the Holy Spirit with the devil, a very grievous sin before God. This sin cannot be committed today because we no longer have Jesus present with us and performing mighty miracles through the power of the Holy Spirit. When Jesus saw how wickedly the Pharisees were acting, he said that they were a brood of snakes, and that their hearts could only produce evil things, for they were by nature evil, just as a good tree bears good fruit, and a bad tree bears bad fruit. So the Pharisees were like bad trees that could only produce bad things. Jesus also adds that no words spoken by men are mere idle words, for they are produced from the heart of man, and show how corrupt he is inside. Every word that men speak shall be therefore judged by God, and this should remind us all to be so careful about the language we use. So often people, even those who are called Christians, use their tongues for all kinds of evil things, like insulting, telling lies, or shouting in anger at others. This is not pleasing to God, and will meet with his judgment someday. The Pharisees demanded to see a sign, thinking this will confirm for them whether Jesus is really the Messiah. Jesus said, "The only sign they shall have is the sign of Jonah. Just as Jonah was in the belly of the great fish for 3 days, so Jesus would also spend 3 days buried in a tomb before rising again. As Jesus tried to deal with these ungodly Pharisees, he tried to help them to see that someone even greater than Jonah had come to them, performing far greater signs than Jonah ever did for Nineveh. Jonah preached and people repented, but the Pharisees wanted signs. Jesus also said that the queen of the south had sought out Solomon's wisdom, coming from afar. But here was someone much greater than Solomon, but they would not give heed to his words or wisdom. While Jesus patiently tried to help the blind Pharisees to understand their sinfulness and to give them opportunity to be spared from judgment, just as Nineveh was spared, he had to warn them of their great danger. He said that a man who has had an unclean spirit go out of him is like a house that has been swept clean. But later the unclean spirit will come again and find him empty, and therefore he takes more unclean spirits, even more wicked, and they enter the man. So the state of the man is worse than at first. Jesus said this generation, that is, of his day, was just like this man with unclean spirits. What I believe Jesus is trying to say is that he came to Israel and cast out Satan by releasing many from diseases and demons. But instead of inviting the Spirit of God to reign in their hearts, they rejected the Son of God and his power, and therefore were left empty. Then Satan would return and come in much greater strength to control the people of Israel, since they rejected their Messiah, and their condition would become even worse than it had been before Jesus had come to them. This teaches us that it is important to respond to God's offer of mercy while it is available, or else we shall be drawn even further into sin and the grasp of Satan. When Jesus' mother and brothers came to see him, and he was busy teaching, he does not leave off what he is doing to attend to his family, but rather explains that his true brothers and sisters are those who do the will of God. From this we learn that the fellowship within the family of God is much greater than the relationships with our immediate family, since we shall enjoy an eternal fellowship with our Christian family. I hope you are not one of those who opposes Jesus because you refuse to submit to his teachings and work. Perhaps today you will surrender your heart to him and make him the Lord of your life. Jesus said, "Whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." Matthew chapter 12, verse 50.